Let's work. Turn it down and listen to the experts. Gotta give a shout to the Talking Junk Network. Showing love, hosting battles, playing dope joints. The break room topics always staying on point. Never disappoint. We'll never need a makeover. We here for the takeover like Jehovah. Talking Junk break room takeover on the podcast. Dropping bomb facts on demand like Comcast. Now drop a comment whenever they're going live. Hit the YouTube channel right now and go subscribe. Peace.
Talking Junk Network,
where entertainment lives.
Welcome to Talking Junk.
I'm your host, Jason Melendez.
Live now every week on Fridays.
Talking Junk.
A multitude of professionals in different aspects, different walks of life.
You have to come on and talk junk like a normal person.
Me and my team, whenever we link up, they're gonna be drink up. We still gonna relax and have few glasses when there's things to think about. Like I'm nice with the boss when I tend to the boss and I'm not talking drink ups. So tell the bartender that tended the bar to please pass me a big cup up. And tell that waitress is waiting on us to put a little ice in it. Now watch the ice become weightless like the spaceships that I be sitting in. No wait and listen, no, they're waiting for that tropical twist that'll tickle your taste buds. Now taste some. Now I insist it's the drizzle.
Welcome to Talking Junk, the podcast that comes to you live every Friday night with a new guest, a new topic, and a new great story for you to what is wrong with me tonight? Dive into. It's going to be one of those crazy nights. I'm having crazy technical difficulties. There's a crazy lag, but thank God for you guys that are going to be listening to it on the podcast sites. You won't know that because StreamYard will clean all of that up. But for you guys that are listening live, please just bear with us tonight for both shows, because it looks like we're in for a doozy of technical difficulties. However, like I said, we have a great guest for you tonight. He is the author of Cain and many more books. This man has so many books, I forgot to keep count. Actually, I kept count, but I left my book in the next room. So like I said, a lot of technical difficulties tonight, so just bear with us. Mr. Dick Wybrow. How you doing tonight, Dick?
How you doing, man? Good, brother, and welcome from Auckland, New Zealand, where it is it's the future. I'm in the future right now, so I can't tell you what's about to happen. I can tell you that your internet's not going to get any better here in the next couple hours.
So it might not even be my internet messing up. It might just be the lag between countries.
It might be. It could. I haven't had a problem with it before, so it could be. It could be our pipe here, or it could be your dial-up modem. It's one of the two. I don't know. It could be either. It could be either of those things. Man.
Well, be my dial-up modem. I did see the AI guy trying to run past my screen a little earlier.
Yeah.
So New Zealand,
it's summer here right now.
It's summer there?
Yeah, it's summer. Yeah, this is going to be funny. It's like I'm much older than you. Years ago, when we used to call the family here, and we'd call from because I was born in Canada and I grew up in the U.S. When we'd call, this is going to sound so old. We would call and we would say hello, it's like grandma or grandpa, whatever. You can't do that today because they're dead, and you can't make that call, and unless you call collect, I suppose. But so you would go, hello, how are you, grandma? And then you'd have to wait for that to go down the pipe and hit them and then come on back. And so they were sort of these extended conversations, almost like you're sending smoke signals. So you and I, this is what we're doing today, man. I'm excited about it. But yeah, like I said, it's summer here right now, so it's warm. She was warm today. It had to have been. They do everything in Celsius here. I still can't get used to it, but it was hot. That was the temperature. Today, the temperature was hot. That's all I know. It had numbers there, but the numbers don't mean anything to me. After being here for 11 years, I still don't know what the Celsius stuff means.
I can't keep up with it either, and maybe I should within the profession that I'm in, but I tend to not care so much. Fahrenheit works well for me.
Well, it doesn't mean anything in the end, because there'll be people that argue, because when they find out I'm from like North America, they'll say, oh, you're on that old system. It's like, what difference does it make? When it comes to kilometers, it comes to Celsius or any of that, it doesn't, none of that matters. What's the temperature? It's hot. knowing the number to that temperature does not make me feel better. I feel hot and I'm sweating places that need talc. and so that number won't be helping that in any way. So yeah, so I don't think it really, in the end, I don't think it matters at all. If something's far away, it's got a number on it. It's just far. We measure stuff in minutes, really. How far is it to your ride into work? 36 minutes. I don't say distance. Everything's in time. So it's either a long time or it's hot. those are the two scales I go on.
Those aren't bad scales to go by. Now, you mentioned you were born in Canada, you grew up in the States. How'd you end up in New Zealand?
My father is Kiwi, and so way back in the late 60s, he flew to the United States, and he wanted to go to the United States. He wanted to emigrate to the United States, but they were all filled up on Kiwis, and so they're like, no, go to Canada. They'll take anybody. And so he went up to Canada and met this beautiful Canadian girl. And then he slept with her sister. And 9 months later, I was born. And so, and that's absolutely true. And then but he always wanted to be United States. And so he ended up taking the whole family down when I was like 9 years old. So I was a chubby kid with Canadian accent and red hair in New Jersey. So that was a party. But so then I grew up in the United States. We moved all around, like we're part of the witness protection program. And then after I got out of the house, I did stand-up comedy for a couple of years. I did radio for about a dozen years or so. And then I got into the television side, and I did television producing. And then 11 years ago, I discovered that because of my father, I'm actually a Kiwi citizen. And so I went to my wife and I said, hey, I found out that I'm a Kiwi citizen right now. She goes, what are we doing here? And that's how my wife rolls. What are we doing here? That was October. By January, we were in country. All our stuff, we either sold or gave it away, put everything we had left onto a pallet and put it on a slow boat. And it came here, and we stayed with a cousin of mine. We've been here for 11 years.
Talk about a gamble, huh?
Dude, rolling the dice, brother. You know what I did? Oh, I don't want to say it out loud. Oh, I'll say it. So I ended up using a lot of my 401k that I wasn't supposed to use. So I owe some money. Yeah.
All right.
Let's not talk too much about that.
No, we won't. We won't say that out loud. And now,
but no,
I know my brother would relate to you by living in the Bronx and being the only ginger Puerto Rican that we knew. So you guys are akin to that. But we moved around a lot too. We're from New York. We lived in Connecticut for 10 years. My brothers still live over there, and I'm over here in Florida. So we travel quite a bit too, but not out of country.
How do you go
does.
from New York? How do you go from New York down to Florida? That's it. Just because you wanted to warm up? I mean, what was that about?
We went from Connecticut to Florida.
Connecticut to Florida. I mean, that's that's where the temperature never rises above about 10 degrees, down to where it's just hot and sweaty and talc, as we mentioned earlier.
Professionally, best decision of my life. Temperature,
Right.
worst decision of my life.
And Florida's a weird place. I did radio in Orlando, and I did radio in Pensacola while I was down there. And then later on, I did radio, and I only sort of discovered a little bit later on that everybody kind of makes fun of Florida a little bit. Nothing against Floridians, but it's a weird place.
It definitely is. It takes some getting used to, but once you get used to it and you start traveling out, you want to come back.
Yeah, no, I hated Orlando, but I dug Pensacola. The folks in Pensacola were pretty great. In fact, I remember when I first got in town into Pensacola, I was doing radio, and that's where the Naval Air Station is, NAS, Pensacola NAS. And so since I was a new rock jock in town, like, hey, come on up in a helicopter. I'm like, okay, helicopter, let's do that. And so I got into a helicopter, and they showed me the beach, and they flew me down the beach. And I'm thinking, oh, cool, we're going to take them to the beach. Maybe I'm the rock jock, so they're going to show me bikini girls. Oh, no. No, they took me down the beach, and he pointed at the water, goes, look at the air in the water. And I don't know, you might know this already, but you see the beach from the sky, and maybe it's just the Gulf Coast, but it's sharks everywhere.
Yep.
I'm not joking. It was shadows. I mean, not dozens, hundreds of them. It seemed like there were hundreds of them. Maybe there were dozens, but to me, more than one shark is hundreds. But there were tons of them. But we don't taste good to sharks. He goes, oh, they almost never bother people. It's like, almost never. I'm never going in the water. I couldn't believe it. But I loved Pensacola. It was great. It was a great area. People were fantastic there.
We don't live too far from Daytona. There's a beach a couple miles down from Daytona called New Smyrna Beach, and we went there, and we thought there were, for some reason, we thought there were manatees in the water because we seen them splashing up and everything. We're like, oh shit, look at the manatees. As people got closer, they noticed that it was in fact sharks. So New Smyrna is the number one beach in America for shark bites.
I wouldn't think you'd find that on the literature. Come to New Smyrna Beach. We've got beautiful beaches. We've got ice cream, and we have shark attacks. That's not something you're going to see in their literature at all. But no, I know New Smyrna really, and I know Daytona Beach really well too.
Now, you mentioned you were in radio and TV production. What made you give it up to become an author?
It was always the same thing. So when I was doing stand-up comedy, I liked that because that was a great, your work day is 45 minutes long. That's a work day. No lunch break, but 45 minutes, I can handle that. But there became a moment where television programmers, who one day I was working for, but the programmers were like, listen, so we can do, if I want to put a show on, all I need is a microphone, a brick wall, and a guy or a girl, and I can make a TV show out of that. And so you started seeing more and more of that on A&E and Food Network and all this stuff. And so I started to see fewer and fewer people showing up to the clubs. So I got out of that, got into radio. So like I said, I did that for about a dozen years. And then all these monsters came in right over 1998 or so. The laws changed because there was a time when you could only own like 12 radio stations and 3 newspapers. Remember newspapers? 3 newspapers and then like a television station. And that was it. And then like 98, they were like, everybody out of the pool. It was open season. So you had places like Clear Channel, which later became iHeartMedia, owning 12,000, 2,000, 3,000 radio stations. And so as they owned all these stations, their thought was, well, let's get some guy in Des Moines to do 12 shows around the country. And they start canning people. But more importantly, they also watered down what radio was. Radio was beautiful, and it still might be. I've been there, like I said, for a decade. But radio was beautiful, like in the 80s and the 90s and even the very early 2000s or so. It was just a creative place with people. But then you suddenly, like I said, you got some dude doing or some woman doing 10, 15 shows around the country. That's not good. They're just filling time or selling something between songs. So I got out of that and I got into television production. I worked for as a C&M producer. I did that, and I did television production for 20 years, and I literally just wrapped that up last week. And
Wow.
the reason for that, the same sort of thing was our show. We've been on the air here in New Zealand. It was a news comedy show, and our show had been on the air for 7 years, and our ratings were basically as high as it ever been, all-time high. We're breaking records, but it doesn't matter. Because these days it's not about high ratings. The paradigm has changed. And so it becomes about digital space and how it was the sort of organic reach you might have, or,
Follow.
all these things that we'd learned to make the show work in the television space. And now that the focus was digital, they were like, yeah. So that all that stuff that you learned and got really good at, none of that matters anymore. And so I've been planning the last couple of years to go full time with the writing stuff, and so that's where I am now. And so, like you mentioned, I've got one series that's got 8 out of 9 books. I'll wrap it up next year. I got a new series that I just started, basically about a reverse werewolf story, which is a comedy thriller, supernatural story. I've got the first 2 books. Third one comes out here in December. And then the audiobook comes out in January, which I'm excited about because now I got 2 actors, something that I've written in a 2-car carpeted garage, because that's what they do here in New Zealand. They don't put cars in their garages. No. They put carpet and then they turn them into rooms. Everybody does it. Nobody pulls cars into garages. So I've got a carpeted 2-car garage, and 1/4 of that is my office. So something I wrote in my 2-car carpeted garage in Auckland, New Zealand. 2 actors out of Los Angeles have lent their voice to this Kane book, and I can't wait to hear what they do. And like I said, it comes out in January. So if you're in audiobooks, please check it out and let me know what you think.
Now, reverse werewolf. What can you give us the premise? I don't want you to give us, the full details on everything. But can you kind of give us the premise of the thought behind that? What does the transformation look like?
So being in news, there's a saying in news, there's an adage in news that says, dog bites man, that's not a news story, but man bites dog, that's a news story. And the basic you can infer behind that just means that when something unusual happens, right? Basically.
Right.
But for whatever reason, because I was writing another thriller about the news industry, I kept on hearing that phrase again and again. And so that got stuck into my head, this notion of man bites dog, that's a story. And you're a creative. You know what that's like when something weasels its way into your subconscious and it won't let go. And so it started rolling around. And so I started thinking, well, what if that was the story? What if I could turn that into a story? So what it turned into was a guy named Kane, who's a 6'7" French Canadian. But 1 year ago, he was a wolf. He was a wolf running through British Columbia. And then this man who's infected, and you find out what that's all about, but he gets bitten. He bites the wolf, man bites dog, in this case, wolf. He bites the wolf. The next day, the wolf awakens and he's a teenage boy. And then he gets brought in by this couple, this couple in British Columbia, Canada, and they raise him for a year, and then he heads out on his own. In that 1 year time, he ends up basically growing human 10 years, and so he's a 6'7" French Canadian, and now he's searching for this guy who bit him, find out the secret behind it, so he can once again turn back into a wolf. Because he misses the days when he used to run free and naked in the woods, which is something he could still probably do, but there would probably be incarceration and very likely a bit of frostbite. So he can't do that. So he's searching for this biting man. And then he's joined by, and I won't give the whole story and everything because nobody wants to hear that. You want to read it. But so he's joined by this woman named Imelda. And Imelda's a part-time criminal. And because one thing he can't do, he can do all these things. He's learned all these things, but it doesn't make sense in his wolf brain how to drive. It doesn't compute because wolves don't have really the motor skills. That's why they don't drive very much. And so he can't drive. And so Imelda, who did a lot of getaway driving in her days as a part-time criminal, she becomes his driver. And these two together go on this adventure to find out the secret behind this guy who bit him. And it turns into all this, secret government organizations and all this stuff. But hopefully through the whole thing, it's quite funny. I'm hoping.
It sounds interesting. Now, with your background in TV production, do you ever think that you'll write a screenplay for Kane?
I have written a couple of screenplays, and I had a poor experience with that. In fact, I'll give you a short version. I wrote a teleplay many years ago for one television show, and it's really tough because you've got to have an agent to be able to even present that to producers of a television show. And so I found a way in to get to the producer. So I had to go through this guy. I'll never forget the name of the guy. It was called Black Box Entertainment out of Los Angeles. And I went to him and I said, hey, listen, can you get this script, this teleplay of a half-hour comedy show, a half-hour sitcom of a brand new show that was on television? And I said, can you get this to them? And he's like, yeah, I guess so. And he had almost no faith because he didn't know who I was, and it was almost impossible. They read it and they were excited about it. And he rings me up and says, Dick, they really like it. It's like, oh, great. He said, yeah, I can't believe it. It's like, oh, you're supposed to be on my side. What do you mean you can't believe it? But this guy didn't know much about me. And so he rings me back and I'm like, so the next couple of hours, I'm just like, I can't even think straight. I can barely breathe. I'm actually going to get, this is going to turn this in. Here comes the television career of writing television. Right. What a dream. And he calls me up and he says, Dick, the show just got canceled. And that'll bitter your heart, brother. That says the gods are out there working against you. So right. I've written a couple of scripts, screenplays, and teleplays, and I might do it for this. But I kind of like this thing. It's a little bit like now, like with the audiobook coming out. This idea of taking the material and giving it to them. They'll stay true to the story in this case, but having somebody else do all that hard work that appeals to me. Doing all that real tough work. So at some point, yeah, there's a chance this could turn into a television show or a film, and I would be fine with as long as I give some of my input. But I'll be fine with people taking it over and seeing how they interpret the material and taking, like I said, some I crafted up in a 2-car carpeted garage in Auckland, New Zealand at 4:00 in the morning and seeing what they can do with it on screen. It'd be fantastic. It'd be neat to see.
I would love to see it live action, but something tells me it would be better off being in animation.
It could be. You know what? It's funny because there are some nuances to Kane. Like one of the funny bits to me when it comes to Kane was, and this is something that people seem to like, was I'm actually not a big monster book guy. In fact, I've read, it's going to sound all posh and everything, but I've read Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, but I haven't really read a lot of monster books. I just like thrillers and humor. And so there's about 5-10% of this is sort of supernaturally. So my humor sort of training, I guess you would say, is I was thinking, I didn't want to wait until the full moon comes up for the entire book for my guy to turn into a werewolf, because that's what happens. So the 6'7" French Canadian, when the full moon comes out, he turns basically into a kind of a werewolf, right? But I don't want to be like, now he's got to wait. The whole book's got to go by, and then he only turns into this on full moon. And so I thought to myself, what about a half moon or a quarter moon? Why wouldn't they? It's still moonlight. Maybe they become lesser wolves. And so that thought led to this idea that if he goes into the moonlight and the moon's smaller, he turns into various dogs. So throughout the story, if it's like a little sliver of moon, he's just like a little yippy lap dog. If it's a half moon, he turn to a pug. If it's a 3/4 moon, he turn to a Rottweiler. And so that's one of the fun things in the story. Now, I don't think that's ever been done before, but people really seem to like that a whole heck of a lot. So I think other than, to your question, other than this idea of the difficulty of, I mean, they can do so much now, but when he's the sort of werewolf creature, yeah, you'd have to do something pretty aggressive with some visual effects, and then the dog stuff. But man, I've seen people do this on their home computers these days. It probably wouldn't take too much because the rest of it, for the most part, aside from a couple of monsters out there, for the rest of it is just the two of them and on this adventure.
Right. Sounds. I can't wait to hear the audiobook and see it.
Yeah.
Nowadays, with everything I got going on, to sit down in a quiet place and read a book is impossible.
Same with me. That's why I'm excited about the audiobook, because for as busy as I am, I mean, I might read, and that's embarrassing to say as an author, I might read a book a month. I might read a book every 3 months. It just depends on what's going on. But audiobooks, I was listening to one earlier today. I was out there mowing the lawn, taking care of, doing my edging, because I'm an old guy. Got to do the edging if you're an old guy. And so I'm doing my edging, and I've got a book in my ear. And so, yeah, they're great. And I'm stoked about it. First 3 books have been coming out January, February, March. So
yeah, you can consume a whole lot more when you just listen to something.
And it's more, it's not just because some people say like, oh, I don't listen to audiobooks, I don't need someone to read to me. It's like, no, it's not people reading to you. They're acting this out. And I'm luckily I've got 2 narrators. There's a kind of a big dude that would actually is going to do the voice of Kane, but they bring in all this emotion. It's like this blockbuster movie of the mind. If you've never done audiobooks before, man, you're missing out. They're really neat. It's really great to listen to.
Well, maybe I should do one.
Have you done one?
No, I haven't. I should, though. I should.
You got a good voice, brother. You should give it a shot. Yeah, I could see you doing paranormal romance.
I like using my voice in various ways, so thank you for noticing.
I can see you doing it, brother. I can see you doing it.
800 steamy me.
You'd be great.
I
actually tried reading the first. I had that other series I've done. I tried reading the first book, and you got to get the sound right. So I spent the better part of my Christmas break about 5 years ago in a closet with a microphone, sweating just like a pig, and I was awful at it. I was so bad. I was so terrible. I thought I can do radio. I can nail this. Take the acting chops. I can't do it.
And that I would love to break into radio. I think I got the face for it. So,
dude, what you're doing now is what you need to be doing. Radio is one thing, but I think everything is sliding away from traditional media. Like I said, with television is a perfect example. Our show was all-time high ratings. And I'll tell you this. Now, radio is pretty great because the reach, as they call it, or cume, is still pretty solid. But like we had a share, like we had like a big shares I'd never even seen in my entire life before. And in a country of 5 million people, 25 to 54, which is that random demo that everybody chases after, when we had an amazing night, take a look, that was 78,000 people watching our show. 78,000 people out of 5 million. And that was considered a good night. And it was considered a good night. That's terrifying. When it comes to television, there's so few people watching TV. It might be more so for radio, but I think what you're doing now is where things need to be. Online and digital is where the world is, man. So keep hammering. You've got a great show. I've seen some episodes before this. It's this amazing sort of contained chaos. I really love it. So keep doing what you're doing, brother.
I appreciate that. But it seems like nowadays every radio show does what we're doing now. They'll go up on YouTube and they'll let people in to the background and show you the ins and outs of what they're doing through the day, so you can kind of put a face to the radio. Out here, there are actually a couple of podcasts that have broken into radio, and their radio, their episodes are on the radio streaming daily.
Great.
There's I'm in the works to getting it prepared, but there's a digital radio station, and they want to put my stuff on there. So I'm hoping that'll work, but it's all in the old adage, scared money don't make money. I'll
fingers,
get there.
Fingers crossed for you, brother. I mean, the sad part in some way, as we make this transition, is we're losing some discovery. It's the same thing people used to say a little bit about when the World Wide Web came in. when the internet came in, because if I want to find something on the internet, for the most part, I'll go say, oh, I'm interested in how to shave goats or whatever it might be. And so I seek out the thing I want to go find. Whereas in the past, you crack open like a Wired magazine or an Entertainment Weekly or something, and you can stumble across stuff that you weren't even searching for, but something you sort of get presented that you might not normally see. It happens a little bit when you go down a rabbit hole, but for the most part, when we're sort of seeking out that laser focus on the stuff that I really like, and like on Facebook, it's going to feed you. It's going to find out you like this, and this. So I can give you more of that. So I think that our interests, or at least the stuff that's presented to us, gets narrower and narrower and narrower because of digital. There's more access, which is great. But like radio, the one thing about that, like as you mentioned, people might just flip by and stumble onto you. Where somebody's going to check out, Talking Junk, they got to click on it, listen to it, which I'm sure a lot of people are going to, and more will all the time. But having an avenue where that was on a bit of a wheel and that would kind of come up and people could kind of test it out, that's sort of what we're losing more and more of. And I'd love to be able to see some way to pull that in, because you never know if there's a show that you never would have clicked on, or there's some topic you never would have been interested in. It'd be neat to have that kind of filter into you in a bit from outside. And we are losing a bit of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which is why we take tremendous pride in saying that you can Google Talking Junk right now, and the only thing that you're going to find is us.
Great.
Now, I know you don't just have the Kane series. You have a multitude of books out. What are some of your favorite books that you have? Or are they all series books, or are they some standalones?
Yeah, in 2023, for the most part, unless you're like a Stephen King or some monster, you're going to be writing a series. That's the only way you can kind of maintain a career to do this. And rather than even mentioning the books, I'll mention sort of a little bit, if it's okay with you, some of the creative process. What I find for me, the font of creativity in some way is the fact I have narcolepsy. And I don't know if you're familiar with that, but narcolepsy is when you're tired all the time, like clinically tired all the time. Somebody compared it once, and I don't have any reference because this is what I feel, is somebody compared it and said, like, stay up for 30 hours. Now go to work. Now come home and make dinner for the family, and I'll go talk to your spouse. And that's what narcolepsy is like. And I don't know, because I'm always feeling this way. And when I got diagnosed with this in my late 20s, I was kind of like, at least I had a bit of a name for it. I wondered why I was always tired. I was always tired. I thought everybody felt this way. But then suddenly I had a doctor say, you have narcolepsy. They tested me out, put the suckers on my face, put me down in the place, and they had me stay overnight. And they watched me on video, and which didn't seem fair, because nowadays people actually pay you to watch you on video. So I think those guys owe me money now. But so I did that. I did that, and they said, yeah, you got narcolepsy. So the first little while after getting that, I was like, that's unfair. I have this thing. No, the other people don't have it. It's kind of rare. But I started to realize that with narcolepsy, that moment where you're lying down, going to sleep, and all those cool thoughts come in your head, and you think, I should write that down, because that's a really an amazing thing. Then you wake up the next morning and you didn't write it down, and you don't remember it. See, that zone that you were in, I'm in that zone 80 to 85% of the day. That sort of spacey kind of zone. And that gives me creativity. I really feel that sort of the governors are off and the mind wanders. Even talking with you right now, I got to make sure I'm focused directly on you, because if I don't pay attention, suddenly I will drift off. And I'll realize, this is the craziest thing sometimes, I will realize I'm still talking. But I'm over here like, my mind is elsewhere.
ADD.
Yeah, so I got to bring myself back. And so, but what that does is that's how I come up with stories like, an infected man bites a wolf and turns into a reverse werewolf. And so I credit a lot of that creativity to narcolepsy. So I guess in that way, I'm happy to have it, because it's really been rewarding doing the stuff I do.
And that's the joy in being human, right? Because
yeah,
we all have those little quirks that make us different, that make us us, that make us one of a kind. And yours just happens to fuel your creativity, which I can wholeheartedly say, I wish I had dick brain.
I think that's a whole, brother. I think, you can still call this Talking Junk. Um, but that's a whole different set of topics.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
it's funny too, and it was a conscious effort to turn it around because I definitely could have been bitter about it. And every now and then I still get kind of bitter about it, but it was a conscious effort to say, listen, no, I'm stuck with this, and I'm going to find some way to make it work for me. And I think I have so far. And people, listen, I have nothing to complain about. There are people that have far worse conditions than I do. That's for sure. But if you can find some way to work at your advantage, and there may not be a lot of instances of that, I got lucky in that case. I got lucky having narcolepsy in that case, and it's worked for me so far.
Right. You're very lucky because I know some Karens that have permanent sticks up their ass. So you made out like a fat cat.
Yeah, but you could, if you did have a permanent stick up your ass, you could be a puppet. See, there are ways. There are ways you can make that work.
I guess. But you would need a hand up your ass and not
Right.
the stick.
Right, there you go. Right. Well, it's whatever whatever you're into, man. And
I'm not into any of that. But to each his
yeah.
own.
Hey, totally fine. Totally fine. So
Now,
that
Dick,
there's book 2. Yeah, there's book 3, and there's a Hellink series. That's the other one I was talking about.
Okay. So these 7 books are just one series?
So those 8 books there.
8 books, okay.
Yeah. No,
I can't count or read. I'm
No,
sorry.
you don't need to anymore, man. We got computers for all that stuff. So that's all one series. And that again, you talk about the narcolepsy effect. So I was just about to point to the screen as if you could see me pointing. So Hellink starts off with basically this guy. This guy is his wife is dying. He makes a deal with the devil to find a cure. And the devil says, "Well, go get me this magic lamp. You find this magic lamp, and this will cure her." And that sets him off on this path. And so it's a fun series. It's way more silly and fun. I mean, Kane's a lot of fun, but it's borderline lunacy, Hellink, and you can tell some of the covers. But notice the 4th cover turns a bit dark, because what happens at that point is I killed him. And I'm not giving anything away, but basically the main character dies. But still within this stream of the storyline, he becomes a ghost, but he doesn't remember his past. And at that point, he decides he wants to become a private detective. So he's a ghost private detective. Because a great advantage to be a ghost private detective, you can't talk to anybody, but for the most part, you can investigate stuff. You go in and out of rooms and nobody sees you, but there are other dangers around. And so as you get later and later to the end of the series, like The Hangman is the most recent one I wrote, and the next one's going to come out next year, Hell's End. Both of these 2 characters come together because it turns out that the original character isn't entirely dead. He's just kind of suspended. So these 2 personalities end up coming together. So it's madcap, man. It's nuts. But again, same thing. People seem to like the lunacy of it. And so far, I've been really happy about how it turned out.
It sounds amazing.
It's goofy. It's goofy, but it's pretty funny. I mean, it's one of the great rewards that I get from people. Somebody will reach out from the UK or Canada or Florida, and say, I was in the doctor's office and I kept getting told to be shut up because I was laughing, and I've never laughed out loud at a book. I mean, that's one of the greatest things. That's a great compliment. That feels great for me. But also as an author, to know that here's somebody sitting in a place where they didn't expect to find that little bit of joy. They didn't expect to find that little bit of humor. And for a brief moment in time, you made their life just a little bit better. And that's the greatest thing in the world. That kind of connection is an amazing feeling to me. And that's one of the things I love the most about writing.
Right. And people don't get that about creators, right? They just think we want to put our most heinous thoughts out there and see if anybody like them. And really, it's just to bring the viewer, the reader, the listener, that little bit of joy.
Yeah.
Take them out of their world for just a second, or give them a little more insight into the world that they're in. Take them out of their mindset and let them feel something different.
There's so much negativity around all of us, and to create a soft space. There was a woman who shot me a note just a couple of weeks ago. She was going through a difficult time, and she had said, like, her father was very sick and some other stuff was happening. And she said that she looked forward to coming home each night. And I would get emotional if I talk too much about it, but she looked forward to coming home each night and sitting down and hanging out with Kane and Imelda because those were her friends, and she knew things were going to be all right. That's just such an amazing thing, man, to touch somebody like that, especially somebody having a tough go of it, and then giving them that little respite, a couple of hours in a book. That's an amazing thing. It's a beautiful thing. And it goes both ways, because I was right at the beginning of writing the third book, which comes out in a couple of weeks. Right in the beginning of writing the third book, I had sort of the start, but I kind of didn't know what I was going to do after that. And that's how I write. I just write until something sort of starts to happen. And I was speaking to a readers group in the UK. And there's a woman, and I don't remember where she's from. I say New Brighton because I like the sound of it. So a woman from New Brighton of this readers group, they'd contacted me. They'd all read the book, and they wanted me to talk to them about the book and go through stuff. And so she said, I just really love this, and this. I can't wait to find more about Kane. I can't wait to hear more about him growing up on the farm with the Canadian couple. And I was like, well, that's exactly what I'm going to be doing in book 3. You've totally nailed it. That's what I plan on happening. And so that conversation ended up inspiring a large part of book 3. And so there's moments where he has flashbacks and we kind of go onto the farm, and it was neat. It was something that the woman who Brighton just sort of said, and a desire that she had. She wanted to know more about this. And so I can kind of feed that at the same time she was feeding me in that creative process, which is really neat.
It's amazing how that works, but you kind of gotta be careful. You don't want to meet an Annie Wilkes.
No.
But
I've been lucky. The only time I've met an Annie Wilkes, I had 2 of them when I was in radio. I had 2 people sort of, radio, this is back in like the late 90s and that, where it's higher profile, but I sort of had 2 death threats, but it was the nature of the industry. That's just part of it. When you get a bright spotlight, that stuff is going to happen.
Hey, yeah, you're not doing it right unless you get a couple death threats. That's
right. I take great pride in that. I take even more pride in the fact that they weren't able to complete that task. That made me really happy.
Right. That makes us real happy too, because now we get to find out about Kane's journey. We get to find out about the end of the Hell's Inc. and whatever else Dick's brain can come up with.
Yeah, and something comes along. It's funny, and you're probably the same way. What am I going to talk about today? What am I going to do today? Every time I feel as though that font might have run dry, then just stuff starts coming in. These gifts, as Tom Petty once called it. I got a chance years ago. I'm just bragging now. When I was in radio, I got a chance to interview Tom Petty. But he said that because people would ask him where the creativity come from, he'd said, I don't know. They're just gifts that come down to me. And so I don't know if it's a spiritual thing or if it's the universe thing, but every time I feel as though, what do I do next? The gifts come in, and I'm just really lucky. I'm an amazingly lucky person. I've got a beautiful thing I can do creatively, and I've got the most amazing wife in the world, man. Who could ask? And I live in New Zealand. Seriously, I've got the best life on the planet.
Wow, that sounds amazing. And we know you have a busy life, so we're not going to keep you too much longer. Why don't you take this time right now to give our viewers, our listeners, just a taste of where to find everything Dick?
Well, my version of that, you just go to my website. All my stuff is up on Amazon. But more than anything, you head to the website, take a poke around if you like what you see, and feel free if you go onto Facebook and you want to chat about writing. There will be somebody watching this right now, and maybe this is your inspiration. Maybe this is your moment where you've been sort of on the fence, thinking like, "Oh, I should be writing a book, and I've been wanting to do this for years." Just do it. Just do it. Just start writing. This is why you're watching this at this moment. This is why you need to be watching this. Is because this is this person from the future in Auckland saying, "Now is your time." And if you have any questions about the process, reach out to me on Facebook, and I'll answer you, and I'll help you any way I can. But I'm always excited about new writers coming in, and you might be the person. So do it. Go to my website. Go to Facebook. I'm there.
There you have it. Another great episode, another great guest, another great journey. And we hope to have Dick on again so he can tell us, give us a little more in depth about his journey, more steps he took to getting into these roles, the luck he had, the bad times, the good times. And a little more of how New Zealand life is. Because the only thing I know about a Kiwi came from WWE and the Bushwhackers. Now, thank you, Dick. Thank you very much for coming on, man. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Jason. It was fantastic. I really enjoyed the time, brother. Good luck to you on that new venture too, man. Fingers crossed for you, brother.
Thank you. I'm gonna try everything I can to make Talking Junk work. We've been going 3 years strong, and we're gonna keep going as much as possible.
It'll work.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And you guys out there, make sure you like, share, and subscribe, because that's the only way any of our dreams are gonna come true. Go to Dick's website, pick up those books, and always remember, those ideas are you sticking your Ethernet cord into the universe and downloading them. So take advantage of that and don't waste it. We love you. Peace out.